Okay, so let's just dive right in. A spiritual teacher from 2,000 years ago and modern quantum physics. What in the world could they possibly have in common? I mean, on the surface, it sounds like nothing, right? One is all about faith, the other is all about hard, cold facts. But today, we're going to explore some really strange and fascinating conceptual echoes between these two worlds. It's a bit of a mind bender, but stick with me.
Yeah, I know, it sounds like a huge stretch. But here's the central question we're wrestling with in this explainer. Could Jesus' really radical message about the nature of reality have these surprising parallels with what our best physicists are finding at the tiniest subatomic levels? Think of this whole thing as a thought experiment. Let's just see where it takes us. So here's our game plan. First, we've got to go back in time, put Jesus in his own historical context, to really get the world he was speaking into. Then we'll look at how he completely shook things up. After that, we're going to take a pretty wild leap into the bizarre world of quantum mechanics, and finally, we'll try to bring it all together and ask, what does this all mean for how we see reality?
All right, so to really get the sheer impact of what Jesus was saying, we have to put ourselves back in his time. He wasn't just talking into a void, right? He was a Jewish teacher living during what's called the Second Temple period. And this was a time of super intense religious debate and, frankly, a lot of political tension and expectation.
Okay, so one of the biggest ideas you hear from Jesus is the kingdom of God. Now, for a lot of people back then, this meant something very specific and, well, political. They were thinking of a future event, like when Israel would finally be freed from Roman rule. But Jesus comes along and totally reframes it. In the main Gospels, he talks about it like it's a reality that's happening right now. And then you have other texts, like the Gospel of Thomas, that go even further, describing it as this internal state you discover through self-knowledge. They called it gnosis. I mean, that shift from an external political hope to an internal right-now reality, that was absolutely huge.
And right at the center of this whole world was the law, the Torah. You have to understand, this wasn't just some dusty rule book. It was everything. It was their covenant with God, their identity as a people. It was literally the fabric of their daily life. And getting this is so important because it sets the stage for just how revolutionary Jesus' next moves were really going to be.
So here's the thing. Jesus didn't show up and say, hey, let's just scrap the whole law. In fact, in the Gospel of Matthew, he says he came to fulfill it. But, and this is a huge but, his idea of fulfillment was completely radical. It was all about turning these long-held traditions on their head and demanding this whole new level of inner commitment from people.
Think about the established way of doing things. The principle of justice was an eye for an eye. Now we hear that and think it sounds harsh, like it's all about revenge. But it was actually a law of balanced retribution. It was a logical, ordered system. The whole point was that the punishment should fit the crime, which was meant to stop endless cycles of escalating violence. It made a certain kind of sense.
And then Jesus says this. He takes that whole logical system of balanced justice and just completely flips it on its head. He replaces retribution with this idea of radical, unconditional love, not just for your friends, but for your enemies. The contrast is just staggering, isn't it? He's completely shifting the focus away from just your external actions to what's going on inside, in your heart.
And this all points to the new kind of authority he was claiming. You see, the rabbis of his day, they would quote other great teachers to back up their points. But Jesus, he just kept saying, you have heard it said, but I tell you. He was claiming this direct personal authority. He talked about God in this incredibly intimate way as Father. And he kept hammering home this point that true righteousness, real goodness, wasn't about perfectly checking off a list of external rules. It was about your internal state, about things like purity, mercy, and love.
Okay, deep breath. We're about to make a pretty big jump here. We're shifting gears from history and theology to something a lot more speculative. We're going to borrow the language of quantum physics, not as a science lesson, but as a lens to look at these ancient spiritual ideas in a completely new light. It's going to get a little weird.
And let me be super clear about this. This is a thought experiment, okay? We are not saying Jesus was secretly a quantum physicist, and this is definitely not scientific proof of anything he taught. What we're doing is exploring some fascinating conceptual parallels. We're just using physics as a metaphor, as a tool, to maybe unlock a different way of thinking about his message.
So let's start with concept number 1, interconnectedness. Quantum field theory is this amazing idea that tells us, at the most fundamental level, reality isn't made up of a bunch of tiny, separate little things, like microscopic billiard balls bouncing around. Instead, it suggests that everything we see, every single particle that makes up you, me, and the stars, is just a ripple, a little vibration or excitation, and these huge underlying fields that connect absolutely everything everywhere.
So you see the parallel here? Physics itself is pointing to this deep, profound unity. It's saying the stuff that makes up distant galaxies and the stuff that makes up us, it's all from the same source. It's kind of a scientific echo of that spiritual idea from the Gospel of Thomas, right? The kingdom is inside you and outside you. That line between inner world and outer world starts to get really, really blurry.
All right, next up, the one you've probably heard of, the famous observer effect. This is where the quantum world gets just truly bizarre. So a tiny particle can exist in this fog of possibilities. It can be here, there, and everywhere all at once, until you look at it. The very act of observing it, of measuring it, seems to force it to make a choice, to snap out of that cloud of potential and into one single definite reality. It's this mysterious, almost spooky link between our consciousness and the physical world.
So where's the connection to Jesus? Well, think about how much emphasis he placed on the power of your inner state, on faith. His teachings are filled with this idea that what you truly believe, what you focus your intention on, can have a real, tangible effect on the world around you. It's like a spiritual version of the observer effect, isn't it? The idea that your consciousness isn't just a passive camera recording the world, but an active participant helping to create it.
And finally, we have non-locality. This is the one that even Einstein couldn't get his head around. He called it spooky action at a distance. Basically, you can entangle two particles. Then, you can separate them by miles or even light years. And the crazy thing is, whatever you do to one particle instantly, and I mean instantly, affects the other. It's like they're still connected, ignoring space and time completely. And in the spiritual world, well, that resonates with ideas like prayer, right? Or the concept of a consciousness that's everywhere at once, a connection that physical distance just doesn't matter to.
Okay, so we've gone from ancient Galilee all the way down to the subatomic world. What's the takeaway from all this? I mean, where does this wild journey leave us? It's pretty amazing when you think about it. Whether you're looking through the eyes of an ancient spiritual master or a modern particle physicist, you kind of end up in the same place. And that conclusion is, the world is not what it seems. Our everyday experience, of solid, separate things and time marching forward in a straight line, that might just be the surface level. Both of these very different paths seem to be pointing to something much deeper, a reality that's fundamentally unified and interconnected.
And so that leaves us with one last big question to chew on. Could it be that quantum mechanics, with all its strange language of fields and entanglement and observers, is just providing us with a new, scientific language for truths that ancient wisdom knew intuitively all along? Is it possible that modern science, in its own way, is just catching up? It's a fascinating thought, isn't it?